Welcome everyone to not overtime. I'm getting used to the rebranding here. Welcome to the rundown. My name is Nicholas Suter. We have breaking news today. Trump has announced on Truth Social that he expects to be indicted on Tuesday. We're going to talk about what we know, what he may or may not know, and we have some footage to discuss, but I'd like to also welcome 𝐒𝐨𝐻𝐬 to the show. 𝐒𝐨𝐻𝐬, how are you doing?
Doing good. It's a nice, sunny day.
Nice. And we have a $20
Just like
super
the
chat.
song says.
We have a $20 super chat from the Native Atheist. I would love to see Trump arrested. I strongly suspect you're going to get your wish. So how did this start, and what do we know? It started with Trump on Truth Social, and what he actually said was former president, current candidate for president is going to be arrested on Tuesday. He is the only one who fits that description. Obviously, it was him, being coy and cute and talking about how he clearly seems to believe that he is going to be arrested and indicted on Tuesday. Why does he believe that? We don't know. He hasn't said why. It's a specific claim, so I don't think he's bullshits a lot and he makes up a lot of stuff. I don't think this is made up. I think he's got a reason for believing it. How strong that reason is, I don't know, but he's not making this up out of thin air. What we have then since learned is that the DA started, the Manhattan DA started a couple of days ago organizing with the Trump team. This includes his Secret Service detail. It also includes state and state and federal law enforcement in New York for the process of arresting and indicting Donald Trump. They have been organizing this for at least a couple of days in the anticipation that they would need to do it early next week. Why is that? Well, it looks like we know that there is a grand jury out on the Stormy Daniels issue, and we're going to talk about how and why and what that means, because that seems like small potatoes. But it is expected that jury will reach a conclusion early next week, probably on Tuesday. Nobody knows what that conclusion is. The DA does not simply bring an indictment. The DA needs a grand jury in order to indict. If the grand jury decides not to indict him, not going to happen. But at this point, it looks like the DA, who knows what he's doing and has seen a lot of these, is extraordinarily confident that the grand jury will return an indictment. The bar for the grand jury to indict is not, is he guilty? It's not, is he probably guilty? It's not beyond a preponderance of the evidence. It's really, is there enough evidence that one could imagine that he could be convicted? And if that's I'm pretty sure that's the bar. I may be confusing that with the bar on bringing charges. I'm reasonably sure that's the bar on a grand jury in New York. I may have to double check that. It's reasonably low. It doesn't even have to be that they believe he's guilty. It's just, is it possible that you could get a conviction? And if so, the grand jury will indict him. If he is indicted, the following will happen. The Secret Service will bring him down to a courthouse in Manhattan. He will be fingerprinted. He will get a mugshot. He will then go immediately before a judge, who will almost certainly release him on his own recognizance, and then he is free to go. This procedure has already been established between the DA and the Secret Service explicitly for Trump. We believe at this point that this has already been choreographed on the assumption that he will be indicted on Tuesday. At this point, there is no way Trump could know that he's going to be indicted on Tuesday, because nobody knows what the grand jury is going to do. They may wait. But we believe that what Trump has done is basically taken the prep work, which he was notified of, and he's taken the prep work, which he was notified of, and gone from that and said, I'm going to be indicted on Tuesday. We at this point believe it's highly likely. There is no way to know for certain, but we believe he has grounds to believe it's a high possibility. There is no way to know. Obviously, we're going to be in standby all day Tuesday. But at this point, we have very high confidence that he is going to be indicted, but his claim that he knows is not a tenable one, but it's highly likely. He's made some other claims. He's made some inflammatory remarks. He has been demanding that people protest his indictment. He has, thankfully, I guess, said that he will surrender. He doesn't have much of a choice because the Secret Service is with him. They determine where he goes. They are driving the car, and they've already agreed to turn him over. But he has said that he will not force a standoff at Mar-a-Lago. He has actually said this. That statement's concerning for any number of reasons. I've not seen... The fact that it was up for discussion and he has to say he's not going to do it is concerning. Here's an idea. If you're married, go to your wife and say, by the way, I'm not going to cheat on you with our neighbor. Yay, I guess. We have some footage of some other rather remarkable things in connection with this. I think there's a lot to talk about. I have actually a few other DMs coming in, but I think this obviously is a big story. I think it's actually bigger than it sounds. Because we've talked before about the dam breaking, and it's the first indictment that's the hardest. And there are reasons that this is the Stormy Daniels indictment, and it's a very good sign that we are going to see a lot of indictments hitting Trump over the rest of the year. So let me start with Xandering, and just based on what we've discussed so far and the limits and how we frame this, because I think it's important. It's going around in the news. People are saying he's going to be indicted. He's going to be indicted. It's a high possibility. It is a very high possibility. We don't know because the DA has to wait on the grand jury, and there's just no way to know what they're going to do. We do know he's very confident they're going to indict. We know he's confident they're going to indict tomorrow, and we know this information has reached Trump. Those are the only facts we have, and we know that Trump has gone out and said, I'm going to be indicted on Tuesday. And he's probably right. Those are the facts as we have them so far. Xandering, thoughts?
I think that it's kind of a historic moment. Don't generally see the indictments of former presidents. I'm not sure yet whether it's a good thing.
Candidates? I'm just going to add he's a current...
Oh, yeah, and current candidates, declared candidates.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing. I mean, I guess history is going to end up judging whether this ended up being a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, on the one hand, I think that we really need to hold, politicians, especially high-level politicians, accountable for the, misdeeds and crimes that they commit, even if they're in office, especially when they're in office, or we're never going to gain back any kind of trust in our political system. It'll just continually erode. And we need to be able to say with a very loud voice that some things certainly are not acceptable. And many of the things Trump did, especially, after the election, I think are absolutely should not be tolerated at all. And we need to say so strongly. And one of the reasons why many people aren't indicted after political office is because, well, we don't want to seem like the opposition party is persecuting its rivals. And that's a good point, and I'm not sure which is going to end up holding up in the long run. I mean, maybe in 50 years, they'll look back and say, yeah, the downfall of our political system was when an opposing political party indicted a member of the opposite party for things he did while in office. And it just went all downhill from there, and nothing but indictments and charging people, and maybe it breaks everything apart, or maybe it sends the correct message that we're not going to tolerate malfeasance in office. We'll see. Well, I might not see, but our younger generations may see whether this ends up being an actual good thing or not. As far as just for the health of the country, I think it's a good thing that we prosecute wrongdoing. We have the evidence to prosecute it. We absolutely should, especially in leadership. They should be held to a higher standard.
Yes, they should. Titan, I got your message. I can't reply. The answer to your question is yes. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's good of you to check. That's going to be important. I agree. So I think you're absolutely right. And we've seen the same thing with, for example, the weaponizing of impeachment, right? Trump was impeached. He's not the first president to be impeached, but after him being impeached, now they're calling to impeach absolutely every president based on it, and every official of the opposite party. And it was used once when a party credibly could believe that it was necessary in order to defend themselves. The Republicans have gone out. So there's a great, for those of you who remember the O.J. Simpson trial, I know that's not everybody. O.J. Simpson was, and my views on that are actually interesting, but we'll stay out of the rabbit hole. Squirrel. O.J. Simpson was being tried for murdering his wife and a waiter at on the outside, on the front of, I think it was his home. I think, I want to remember that correctly. And a comedian, Dana Carvey, came out and described the trial perfectly, where he said there was really just this huge mountain of evidence. And what made Johnny Cochran this amazing lawyer was he looked at all of this evidence, which was overwhelming, DNA, blood, the whole 9 yards, and just turned around and said, why are we even having a trial? You know, it's innocent. You know he's innocent. I know he's innocent. I'm going to play a little jazz trumpet. You know, it's just sort of like, and that's a lot of what happened. He's right. That is a common strategy, and one that's sort of it's gaslighting, really. And we saw a lot of that during the impeachment trial against Trump, and it's become now where they're threatening to impeach every member of the Biden administration. And what is an important tool is being weaponized. But the problem is, yes, it is entirely possible that the Democrats weaponized it and used it inappropriately against Trump. I don't believe so. I think it's quite easy to argue how and why, in fact, the impeachment should have been successful and he should have been removed. But that notwithstanding, one thing that I think is undeniable, they had cause. They weren't making this up out of thin air. There was enough probable cause to go forward, and they went through the process. I'd also like to add, Trump is running around saying the DA is going to indict me, and he's been saying a lot of other things. We're going to get into some of his statements in just a minute. It's the DA and it's the Democrats. No, it is a grand jury, which is selected roughly the same way as every other jury. In fact, if you go to jury duty, there's a possibility you're going to be on a grand jury instead of a regular jury. They're selected I think in most states the same way. And it's a jury of his peers in Manhattan who are ostensibly going to reach the conclusion he needs to be indicted. There's a reason the process is done the way it's done, and even if the DA was biased in one way or another, the indictment is coming down from the people of New York, not from the DA. So we're going to get into his statements. Yeah, let's get into his statements, and then we're going to get into what I think some of the repercussions of this are going to be long term. The actual statement that he made, and he made it at 7:29 this morning, quote, "The far and away leading Republican candidate." I didn't realize DeSantis was in trouble, but okay. And a former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week for the Stormy Daniels thing and for astonishingly poor grammar. Protest Take Our Nation Back, which is a call to action to the very people that engaged in the January 6th riots. So any thoughts on that, Isandering? Oh, before we do, Trump's a spokesman on behalf of Trump came out later and said that he, in fact, does not have, and this was as of, I think, 2 hours ago, specific knowledge, so the DA has not told him that he's going to be indicted, but he is highlighting his innocence and the weaponization of our justice system, and that that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is conducting a political prosecution. So thoughts?
I think that he's probably what was likely causing his little outburst saying, "Oh, I'm going to be," is his whatever lawyer team he actually has probably said, "Hey, look, there's sufficient evidence that in any other case, a grand jury would bring charges. So, expect that this is probably going to happen." And of course, Trump's went, "They're arresting me, and I can use this politically to galvanize my supporters." And so I think that's probably why he came out and said that, and he just likes the limelight. He likes to spout off about things that doesn't seem to have any filter whatsoever.
Well, we do.
Apparently doesn't even have word check on his phone to make sure that he spells things correctly.
we do know that the Secret Service has been talking with the DA as to how to hand him over. And that was in anticipation of, at first it was reported that they were going to do the planning next week. And what we've learned is the planning was for next week. They wanted to be ready by next week. We know that the grand jury is out, and we know that the grand jury is expected to return probably on Tuesday. So I think he was made aware of those facts. So I think, yeah, he jumped from that to, let's see, he jumped from that to, okay, they're gonna come at me on, I'm going to be indicted on Tuesday. And to be fair, again, I think he's probably right. I think the odds are now very, very good that he's going to be indicted on Tuesday. We also know, okay, so initially looking at this, I have a number of concerns. My first concern is that he's escalating the rhetoric, and we're going to get into some of the rhetoric. We have some footage of some videos that he's also released, which appear to me to be deliberately inflammatory. He is reiterating the election falsehoods that, the election was stolen. He is reiterating that Americans need to take this back, and they need to put the rightful president back into the White House. So he's making all these claims, and it's hard to know what's... Now that the cat is out of the bag and it looks like that an indictment is on Tuesday, let's assume even that there isn't one on Tuesday. The big question is, what's this going to do with his supporters? How much are they going to mobilize? So that's the first most immediate question that I have, is what are we looking at in terms of people protesting? The good news is January 6th, the committee, the indictments, the arrests have worked hard enough that hopefully people are going to have a second thought about this, because if Trump doesn't get into office, he cannot protect them. All right, I'm going to ask you to mute, Xander. I'm getting a hissing sound intermittently on the back end, so if you can mute when you're not talking, and then that would be a help. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we've talked about the possibility of indicting Trump for well over a year here. We've talked about it for a couple of years, and one of the things that we have mentioned is that the first indictment is going to be the hardest, and it's the first person through the wall. The reality is Trump did so many things that were unprecedented, and everybody always said, well, he's going to get busted. It's going to, and it never happened. And I think the reason was sort of a collective state of shock. A, what do you do? And B, can you really arrest a president? What happens if, he can't go to jail, and he really can't. There are legit reasons you can't put a former president of the United States into Gen Pop. That's just not going to happen. So what's going to happen? What are we going to do? And everybody's sitting down, and nobody wants to be the first one to prosecute him, because if you screw it up, your career's over. If this doesn't work, it's over. Once he's got an indictment, blood in the water, that's it. The dam fails. This is the first leak in the dam. If he gets indicted, we are going to start to see other massive indictments coming through. All of the other issues take a lot more work, take a lot more investigation, are a lot more complicated, and started after the Stormy Daniels investigation. We're seeing the Stormy Daniels investigation come first for any number of reasons. It was one of the first things that they started looking into. They didn't put the kind of resources they've been putting into Deutsche Bank, money laundering, and a couple of other ones that we are expecting where the grand jury is out. We also know his lawyer just testified to the DA, not to the DA, to a grand jury on his former lawyer was forced to testify to a grand jury on the destruction of classified documents, the keeping of and destruction of classified documents. So there's a grand jury out on that one. And if they know that he can be indicted because they've seen it happen before, it makes future indictments a lot easier. I think we are about to witness a string of indictments coming down. And I think even if this doesn't happen on Tuesday, and again, I think the likelihood is very strong, prosecutors are sitting there saying, you know what, it's possible. And so I think this is going to ramp up every single investigation against him. I think this is the beginning of the end. I think once this indictment comes down, and that's why it's worth talking about right now, even though it hasn't come down, the chances are at this point extraordinarily high that we are going to see him indicted probably on Tuesday, but almost certainly next week. The Secret Service, we know, is prepared for it. The DA has worked with the Secret Service, has worked with local police and federal authorities for it. So at this point, the likelihood is very high that he's going to be indicted on Tuesday. Any final thoughts before we get to some of the glorious video?
Other than the fact that one of the reasons why I was hesitant about this earlier is, there's like, oh, well, they've been talking to the law enforcement, which Secret Service is, about how they're going to turn him over. And I'm like, well, of course they would. I mean, even if there was a 0.5% chance that he gets indicted, the conversation needs to be had saying, hey, this is a possibility. What do we do in the event of? So that was one of the reasons why some of the very early reporting on some of these things, I was like, let's be a little careful here, because that's just something that would happen with somebody that has indictment or potential indictments against them. So I've kind of dismissed the coordinating with the Secret Service and how to hand them over, because that would happen anyway. Though Trump coming out and saying it, I guess now we get to talk about it, because Trump's saying he's convinced it's going to happen, and we don't actually really know. Again, on the stupid hands and swords. On the one hand, I want this to happen because we need to send a strong statement, as I said earlier, that this isn't going to be allowed, and Trump has done some things that I'm completely aghast of, and think are particularly dangerous to our republic. And then on the other hand, what kind of precedent does this set? Is this now going to be used as the reason to let's indict everyone that we don't agree with, and whether it's going to be weaponized? I worry that may happen.
Although I would like to point out, you brought up a point I had never considered, because I at one point early on had said you got to let Trump go for this kind of stuff because of all of those reasons. And you pointed out that letting him go and not indicting him also sets a precedent, and it sets a very bad one. So you're going to set a precedent either way.
Yeah, you will. So, I mean, if we have to set a precedent, I would rather stand on principle that nobody is above the law. You break the law, you are going to be charged, and especially people in power and leadership, and that embodies the presidency of the United States. The American people need to have that at least belief that these people are working towards the best governance of our country. And you lose that, and then much like kind of Congress has lost most of its, nobody really trusts Congress anymore, and it's a short step from we don't trust them to be doing what's right, and what's in the best governance of the country, and it starts falling apart. That's how governments collapse. Our government was specifically set up to govern at the will of the people. And if the will of the people is lost for the kind of government that we have, it's a very short step to collapse. And then where do we go from there? The government wants to try and remain in power. That's how we end up slipping from, at least in history, from at least quasi-democracies or republics into dictatorships. And we don't want to see any of that happen. I'd very much like to preserve our republic. I happen to like our republic, so I'm really torn on this. I think the right thing to do is absolutely charge him. And I worry about what the consequences will be for that down the road.
I think those are valid points. And it is weird that it looks like the first charges are going to be on the Stormy Daniels thing, but that was actually honestly what we were always expecting. And, then money laundering. Well, then it's going to be the national secrets. Then it's going to be money laundering. And then the tax fraud will kick in. My guess is it's going to be that order, and my guess is all of those are going to kick in by the end of the year. The IRS is going to get off their ass, because the IRS does not want to be the last one to indict them. So the IRS is going to get off their ass. They've been auditing for 18 years or whatever. They'll get off their ass. This will be the year that if this indictment comes in at some point in the near future, which I suspect it will, we're going to see a lot more. The IRS will, it's going to be roughly in that order. So let's talk about Some of the other things that we have seen that people have, what I'd like to do is let's start with this one. There are a lot of clips. Trump's come out and said a lot of things on social media in the last 24 hours. We're going to start with this one, and let's hear what he has to say. If you don't get the audio, let me know.
Crooked Democrat prosecutors, many of them racists in reverse. They are absolute racists. Are trying to steal a second presidential election. They did it in 2020, and we're not going to let them do it again in 2024. Make America great again.
That is Trump on the reverse racism, which of course is not reverse racism would be not being racist, I guess, but I don't know. And that he is being prosecuted. There's an echo. All right, thank you. I'm going to play that one more time. We'll try to eliminate the echo there. So let's
Crooked Democrat prosecutors, many of them racists in reverse. They are absolute racists. Are trying to steal a second presidential election. They did it in 2020, and we're not going to let them do it again in 2024. Make America great again.
That should have dealt with the echo. Any thoughts on that, Andrew?
I've never liked his rhetoric, and I think that a lot of his rhetoric is dangerous. This is one of the reasons why, while he was actually in office and the few times he'd come up and actually do something nice, I'm like, man, would this man just shut up? It's like, I think he would have been a hell of a lot more popular to more people and could have potentially won his reelection bid had he just shut up. And here we go. He's mouthing off again, and I don't think that he's making anything better.
All right. We've got this one.
Patriotic Americans are being prosecuted for peacefully protesting a stolen election. Let them go. They were convicted or are awaiting trial based on a giant lie, a radical left con job.
That's his views that everybody who is currently in jail for January 6th should be released. This was actually this is an echoing of a statement that he gave, I think, 3 or 4 days ago. And he's sort of been making the rounds that he thinks, and echoing the Tucker Carlson propaganda that this was a peaceful, January 6th was a peaceful protest. That's wow. Before we continue, YouTube. Hi, it's Nick again. We've had this discussion before, and I've actually stopped mid-show in the past to let you beautiful people at YouTube know that I love streaming on YouTube and I love doing this show. And we are a news and educational show. We are showing what Trump is saying because he's lying. We know he's lying. Everybody knows he's lying. And we're discussing it so that we can fight misinformation. When you strike this episode, which chance is about 80 to 90% you will, I'm going to point you to the timestamp of this discussion I'm having with you right now, and it will be the second time I've had to do that, and remind you that we are fighting misinformation, not promulgating it. So YouTube, in the very likely chance that you're going to strike this episode and maybe the channel for misinformation, I would like to make it crystal clear. Nobody here believes any of the horse shit. And the only reason we're not laughing at him this time, which last time we were falling out of our seats laughing, is because this is really extremely serious. Thank you, YouTube, for your attention in this matter. Let's timestamp that, and I'll send it to them when they hit this show. And for those of you who think I'm kidding, that's what we had to do last time, and it actually worked. So we'll see. So, do I need to play that again? Little message for YouTube. Nope. So, Xander, did you want me to play that again? Did you comment on that one? I don't remember. I was listening to that, and I was like, okay, we're gonna get nailed. This show is gonna get flagged. Any thoughts on his January 6th, what he just said on the January 6th about it was peaceful and yada, yada, yada?
If there was any doubt in my mind whatsoever that he was being overly persecuted, which I believe in some instances he was, and I had even a shred of potential support for him. After making those statements, he's lost all of them because it all was one giant lie from beginning to the end. And one of the things that I want from my representatives is to be told the truth. Even if it's a difficult truth or truth that I don't like, I still want them to speak the truth as they know it. And we know fairly well what the truth actually is in this instance, and that ain't it. So it's like every time this man opens his mouth, I'm like, I want him to go away and stop talking. Hopefully, maybe that will happen.
Well, listen, even if he gets indicted, even if he were thrown in jail or house arrest or whatever, he ain't ever going to shut up. But I think at some point people are going to say, you know what, we've had our fun. We're done listening to the crazy. $2, Sinister Porpoise. Sister Porpoise, thank you so much, Sinister Porpoise, for your channel. And thank you, by the way, I'm not sure I thank Native Atheist, but thank you, Native Atheist, for your generous. We appreciate it very much. It's very helpful. This episode's going to be demonetized. Most of our episodes are demonetized. And again, it'll probably get the channel struck. So it's just going to be one more nightmare. But it's what we do. So, $2. Prosecutors are known for announcing indictments. Yeah, they are. And this one, the indictment has not been made yet. It's going to be made when the grand jury comes back, which will almost certainly be Tuesday. I'm curious as to why they believe it's Tuesday. I'm wondering if did I miss something? Is Monday a holiday? I expect that basically they've probably what has happened is they maybe have even reached the verdict. They haven't told anyone, and they're just waiting. You know, it's like if a jury reaches a verdict very late in the day. So if they reached a verdict at basically at close of business Friday, what they'll say is, okay, next business day we'll deal with it at the top of the day. We're not going to deal with it now. So it may be that they've reached a verdict. The DA wouldn't know what that verdict is. Nobody's going to know what that verdict is, but the DA appears to have high confidence that it's going to be an indictment, and the DA wouldn't have brought the charges if he didn't think he could get that. So I think what we're looking at, I think we're looking at an indictment. I think the chances of that are very good. All right, so let's yeah, and what the prosecutor clearly, and it was more at first, when we first looked over the material, it looked like they were just preparing for a possible indictment and so on and so forth. But some of the later material that I saw that was released actually came out of the DA's office, and it was like, no, they're preparing to actually have to employ this early next week, and that the expectation from the DA's office is that early next week they will need the Secret Service's assistance in bringing him in. So, and again, he's going to be, if he's indicted, you're going to see a mug shot, he's going to be fingerprinted, it's going to be the whole 9 yards. He's going to go before a judge, and I can't fathom anything other than released ROR. So he'll be out. You know, the whole process will take him 2 hours. Next video, we're gonna save that one. Let's see, this should be.
They know that we can defeat them. They know that we will defeat them, but they're not coming after me. They're coming after you. I'm just standing in their way, and I always will stand in their way. Thank you very much.
That's terrifying. That's Pinochet level shit again. It's been a while since we've compared him to Pinochet, but that's the dictator. That's I am suffering all the slings and arrows for my people because they're really after you. Holy shit. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that one?
The same thoughts when we did the entire episode on him being just like Pinochet. And this is one of, I mean, that episode really, really infuriated me because, you know, this is supposed to be a free country and he's doing exactly what dictators do in countries all over the place. You know, it's incredibly frustrating. I really dislike Trump.
And to reiterate, so when we compared him to Pinochet, we didn't compare him to Pinochet in the end years when he was murdering people, but we argued, and I think rightfully so, this was when Trump was basically having people kidnapped off of the streets of Portland and going before a secret judge. There was no record of their detainment. It was the mom vans and then police that were wearing military uniforms without identification. And the concern that we had was that was exactly how Pinochet started. And what Pinochet did was he was arresting people who were genuinely causing trouble, by the way. The people he was arresting were the bad guys. And he was arresting drug lords. He was arresting all sorts of, and he was literally cleaning up the streets and making the world a better place. However, in his view, he was the only thing standing between the nation and utter chaos. And so when people started pointing out that the methods that he was doing was illegal, even if it was to bad people, it was illegal, those people started disappearing, including journalists, anyone who criticized Pinochet, on the grounds that, well, you shouldn't be able to criticize Pinochet because he's the only thing that can keep the country running. And if you criticize him, you're actually an enemy of the state. Trump is, and that's not an uncommon narrative, and that's not an uncommon way to go, and that's where we saw Trump going, and that's where I'm seeing him going with that statement again. So that's where the Pinochet comes from. It always starts like this. That's why it has to be taken seriously. And ask any historian. This is not this is not wild speculation. We've seen this a lot.
You can leave it to them, and they
Yeah,
won't
and
pay tax.
Yes.
I said, yeah, and it's like we're not being hyperbolic in any way, shape, or form. We're not trying to exaggerate. We're not, none of that. It's like this really is frightening stuff when you look at the actions of pretty terrible despots throughout history. They often start exactly this way, and it should be taken incredibly seriously.
I'd like to point out too. Wait, hold on. That was the one of the thought experiments I like to try to do is imagine I heard something happening in another country. If we heard about January 6th happening in Canada, in the UK, in Germany, in France, or in Spain, all Americans would correctly identify the seriousness of it. They put up a gallows and were shouting in front of the Capitol building, hang this guy, and they broke into the Capitol building and they were armed and they had the ties and they had the... If we saw that happening in France, we'd identify it correctly. Would recognize what it was. If we saw it in Germany, if we saw it in Canada, for fuck's sake, we'd be sitting there going, if this happened right outside Justin Trudeau's house, would sit there and say, that is fucked up and that is scary, and I'm glad I'm not a Canadian. But because it happened here, 50% of the population is making excuses for it. It wasn't really that bad. They're Americans. They weren't going to really do anything. They crossed the line when they put up a gallows and threatened to hang the vice president and had the plan to do it ahead of time, had the weapon stashes. None of this is in debate. Utterly fucking insane. All right, let's we're gonna could we see that Trump shares the same cell as Epstein? Yeah, I'll make a few calls. I'm sure we can get that arranged. That would be awesome. I like that. All right, let's see what Trump has to say now.
You can leave it to them and they won't have to pay tax. But if you don't love your children so much, and there are some people that don't, and maybe deservedly so, it won't matter, because frankly, you don't have to leave them anything. Thank you very much. Have fun.
Okay. I included that clip, not because it pertains specifically to any political thing that we're talking about, but because I think that's unhinged. And I think that is a beautiful encapsulation of just the kind of unhinged that Trump is, and that he just puts this up. This he put up on Truth Social. This was pre-recorded. He didn't have to put that up there. That didn't have to go out. He had complete control of the video the entire time. That was a message that he felt needed to be put out there. Some of you don't love your children. We get that. He is disconnected from any kind of reality that I can understand. At least that's my thoughts. What are your thoughts on that? I know we're doing it all in little shorts. I apologize. That's all we really had time for.
One of the things I think has been overlooked with that last part of his statement is he ends it with "have fun." And when you look at all of the rhetoric that he's put out, which seems directly orchestrated to cause a reaction in his supporters and followers, for him to end his little message with "have fun" tells me that he is looking forward to it, making light of what could potentially happen. Oh yeah, go out, burn your country down, have fun. That last statement I found chilling, and I tried to figure out why, because I saw that little thing that he'd put up. Somebody posted it in Twitter, and I saw the video. And when I got to the end and said "have fun," I was like, here's somebody who is deliberately charging the political environment and ends it with something like "have fun." It's like, does he not take seriously the fact that this could cause quite a lot of problems, and he wants you to have fun? Every time we have to discuss Trump, I hate him more and more and more. He's more and more and more dangerous the longer this goes on, and I've gotten to the point where I just wanted him to shut up and kind of go away and let's forget about Trump. I'm sick of all of this, and now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, no, this man does need to be indicted. He does need to stand trial for the things that he's done, because this is incredibly dangerous.
And the only thing more, and putting him on trial, by the way, is dangerous, but the only thing more dangerous than putting him on trial is not putting him on trial. So, no, I think you're right. All right, I think I may have one more. And this is the kind of stuff he's putting out. And the one on the reverse racism, one of the previous, most of these are veiled calls to action. My hope is that at this point, enough people have seen what's happening and just how easily the convictions are rolling in on January 6th. And not for like congressmen, but for the people who actually, were in there doing this. So my hope is that gives people a lot of pause. Trump is also starting to be viewed as a clown, at least even publicly in the Republican Party. What Rupert Murdoch does going forward is, I think, going to have a huge impact. I do believe Fox News is dead and buried. I don't think Fox News is going to survive the suit with Dominion. I think Dominion's going to win the suit. I think that's crystal clear from what we've been seeing, and I think there's going to be punitive damages that's going to exceed the market capitalization of the company, and Fox News will go under. I'm really rather sure of that at this point. Can't know for certain, but it's very hard to see anything other than that happening. So Rupert Murdoch is sitting there with his company looking really quite bad given what's being released, and he clearly does not want Trump to win. So the question is, what's he going to do now? And I think that's going to have the ability, that may be sufficient to tip it one way or another towards whether we see any significant amount of violence or not. One of the reasons we decided to go with this right now and talk about it is because I am concerned that if it's not framed and if it's not discussed, we're going to wake up on Monday with a lot of people, saying, oh my God, we're going to protest and all this other stuff. And again, the reality is, we don't know for certain that he's going to be indicted. I think the chances are very, very high, easily over 90%, or he's going to be indicted on Tuesday. We don't know. Even the DA doesn't know, because he's not going to know until he hears from the grand jury. The grand jury makes that decision, not him. But you can often tell these things in advance, and I think that the DA is rightfully extraordinarily confident. We're going to end with one more interesting piece, but what I want to do is, before we do that, I want to check in with the live chat, see if anybody has any questions. Also want to make sure, Xandring, that you've had a chance to say any final thoughts. We're going to do one more. Oh, dear Lord. Thank you. Okay, so we have, let's see, we have a couple of other things. Let's see. So House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has come out and said, quote, "Here we go again, an outrageous abuse of power by a radical DA who has..." Jesus fucking Christ. Listen, let's assume for a second it's true. The Speaker of the House should not be commenting on active investigations by the District Attorney of Manhattan. McCarthy couldn't have made it to House Speaker without Trump. He knows it. He's paying him back. Here we go again. An outrageous abuse of power by a radical DA who lets violent criminals walk as he pursues a political vengeance against President Trump. I'm directing relevant committees to immediately investigate if federal funds are being used to subvert our democracy by interfering in elections with politically motivated prosecutors. The answer to that is yes, federal funds are being used to subvert our democracy and to interfere with elections because you, sir, have used federal funds to spew that utter horseshit on Twitter. You receive a paycheck from the federal government. Everything you just said is under the umbrella of Speaker of the House. It was on the Twitter, official Twitter of Speaker of the House. So congratulations. You have just used federal funds to interfere with an investigation. So the answer to your question, sir, is yes. Then there was a reply out on MSNBC. Quote, "The Speaker of the House has absolutely no business interfering with the process." Okay, well, hold on. Let's just see. Thank you, Titan, who sent me this also. This is worth. So I'd like to. Yeah. Oh, I put that in the wrong spot there. So while I'm setting that up, is Andrew any final thoughts? And then we'll do a rundown because, again, I want to make it clear what we do and do not know. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of claims. Most of the claims that I've seen are within 80 to 90% accurate, but they are not 100%. And so we're going to clarify what we know, how we know it, and what we've speculated on. But before we do that, any final thoughts, sir?
May you live in interesting times. I have a feeling this is going to be looked upon in American history as probably one of those turning points. And I am concerned about which direction we're turning.
Now, this is a meme. I caution people that it's a meme. It's a little juicy. It's fun. I'm curious to know what voted over to, but it's worth pointing out. So I'm going to put this up. So again, also in response to the speaker's comments, people who interfered with the democratic process, and it sucks. It sucks when your guy's the better guy and he loses. I know because I worked on the, right before Kerry. I can remember Kerry, but I can't remember Al Gore. I worked on the Gore campaign. He won. I'm sorry he won. And I was disappointed when he said, "We have a process. The process has gone through. I'm bowing out." I wanted him to fight more. A lot of people wanted him to fight more. When do you call it quits is always difficult. And politics in a two-party system is nothing more than a game of brinksmanship, and that's extremely dangerous. That's why in my view, the biggest threat to this country is not money. That's the second biggest, being able to bribe political officials with super PACs and yada, yada, yada. It's the fact that we have a two-party system. It's nothing but brinksmanship, and eventually it's going to come down to violence because you don't have an alternative. There's nowhere to go. But responsible politicians don't encourage us down that path. There's two directions. That towards Hume's man's state of nature, and we're all, at war with each other, and civilization where we're all happy, utopia, flowers, and all that other shit. We've been to one of those. We'll never be to the other side, but everything's on a spectrum, and everything you do is moving you in one direction or the other towards the spectrum. Easiest way to get elected is to move towards the Hobbesian state of nature and just tell everybody, "Oh, we're in big trouble and you got to go out and commit violence." And that's a great way to get elected. It's a terrible way to actually run the country, but it gets you elected. Trump is doing that in a way, and by the way, politicians have been doing that shit for a very long time. So let's not sit there and say, oh, back, 150 years ago, Washington and, no, they said and did plenty of nasty and mean things to each other. But this is a different thing. This is absolutely calls to violence, calls to overturn legitimate elections. And he's been doing this for a while. And this shit just has to stop. And when I say that, that's not a thinly veiled, we should know. It has to stop, and it has to be stopped the way a civilized country stops these things. You put the fucker in jail and you throw away the key. And then anybody who says, well, that was the wrong thing, go protest. Go ahead and do that. The second you do violence, you get a cell next to him. It's that simple, and that's the way it's got to be. So, all right.
Yeah, I swear to God that somebody somewhere wrote one of those taboo books that lots of people try to get banned. So somewhere somebody wrote the taboo book, How to Overturn a Republic for Dummies. And Trump read it, and it had enough pictures in it that he got the picture quite well and is following it step by step by step. And that cannot be allowed to happen if you want to keep your republic.
And answer to there was a question. We've discussed this before. We're going to be discussing this a lot, I think, in the future. Trump will not go to jail. He will never go to jail. Why? And I, by the way, agree with it. I don't like it, but it has to be the case. The reason is Trump gets Secret Service security detail for the rest of his life as a result of his position, and he kind of needs it. I'm not thrilled. I don't think he should have ever been elected. I think he's the worst president in human history. I don't think there's going to be a human history, in U.S. history, and I don't think there's going to be any question about that 50 years from now. But having said that, you have to protect U.S. presidents. There's a lot of reasons you have to protect them. Most of them are patently obvious. Some aren't. It doesn't matter. You have to do it. You can't protect him in jail. And even in jail, you have to protect him. So you can't put him in jail unless you're going to put him in a solitary confinement and unless you're going to have the entire jail run by the U.S. Secret Service, which is a very bad misuse of government funds and is not productive. I don't like the idea of him being in house arrest, but he's going to lose all his money. I have zero doubt he's going to lose all his money. We've talked about that before. We'll talk about that again some other time. His business is going to be gone. His money is going to be gone. He's probably already in debt up to his ears. He certainly owes a bunch of banks, Deutsche Bank, all from money laundering and that. And we've discussed all that shit. We'll discuss it again. He's not going to have an easy life. It'll be a shit ton easier than anyone who's in jail. It'll be house arrest. I will say this. Some people don't mind jail all that much, believe it or not. And I've met people who prefer jail to being out. There was, and in some cases, it even just for short periods. Live in Boston. There was a homeless guy, couldn't find a shelter. It was 0 degrees outside Fahrenheit. So he took a rock, smashed a church window. When that didn't get the police, he went and broke into an electronics store and just waited for the police to show up so that he could be in jail where he'd be warm and he'd get food. And when they were about to release him, his lawyers argued that they should keep him in jail because if they released him, it was so cold out, he'd just go around breaking more stuff and they'd have to rearrest him. So just keep him in jail. There are people who prefer to be on, and they're institutionalized. There are people who prefer to be on the inside. Jail is a punishment. Trump would suffer in jail. But when I think of what is the worst punishment you could give Trump, it's not throwing him in jail. It really isn't. It's having him humiliated, called a loser, seen as a loser, and truly viewed in the eyes of history as a buffoon. Not even the worst president in the U.S., just a buffoon of a president and a human being. And that's the way things are shaping up. So I'd rather be seen a buffoon than spend a year in jail. Admittedly, he wouldn't. So at a minimum, he's going to suffer more than most people think. It's not what I'd like. He's going to get house arrest. That's it. End of discussion. And that's the way it has to be. There's no practical way to get him in jail. Don't worry about it too much. He has to wear that ankle thing the rest of his life. Well, this is where we're going to be. He's not there yet. That's where we're going to be, and that's a humiliation for him, and he is going to die filled with venomous rage at the indignity of what's been done to him. And at least in jail, it'd have other people to rage to. Not what I'd like, but it's not as easy as people think it is. All right, so as a final, just a rundown of what we know, what we're speculating on, and what we've seen. All right. Trump came out earlier today, I think it was 9 a.m. Eastern Standard, roughly around that time, and suggested that he was going to go to jail. Let me see if I can find the actual quote, or not go to jail, sorry. I'm just going too quickly, and then, so let me slow down a bit, and I will get the exact quote, because I think the quote is important. He did it in the usual Trumpian style, said, quote, I did this, actually, it was at 7:30 a.m. on Truth Social. Quote, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States of America, will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest. Take our nation back. He posted that at 7:30 a.m. this morning. At this point, we have high confidence that he does not know that for a fact. We have high confidence that he has not been informed by a district attorney that he is going to be taken in on Tuesday for a fact. That we believe that he has not been told that these are facts. We do believe, however, well, we know for a fact that last week the district attorney started organizing with the Secret Service as to how he would be taken in if he got indicted. And then we believe yesterday that was elevated to a claim by someone in the DA's office that they would probably need to do this on Tuesday. We do know there is a grand jury that is out. The grand jury is on the Stormy Daniels deal. We talked about that. I think the DA at this point, and the DA is not going to determine, it's not the DA that indicts, it's the grand jury. And you don't know that the grand jury is coming back. But my suspicion is that the grand jury is not going to convene on Monday. Tuesday is the nearest date that they're going to convene. My suspicion is they may have already reached a verdict, and they're waiting on Tuesday to do the formality of dropping it. Even then, the DA doesn't know what it is. But the DA's watched the jury from the beginning, and he's watching the jury. He's not watching his people testify. The DA does not watch the testimony. He doesn't care about the testimony. He cares about one thing. That's the reaction of the jury. So he's watching the jury. He's listening to his own witnesses testify. He's got a very good idea of how well this is going. The DA is, at this point, extremely confident. It looks like that there's going to be an indictment, and they seem to believe that it's going to be on Tuesday. It appears that the Secret Service is prepared to at any time send him over. That discussion has been had, but it does look like the expectation is on Tuesday he's going to be indicted. Nobody knows, but I think that's at least a 90 to 95% certainty that we're going to see Trump indicted on Tuesday. We're going to be on standby, obviously, the entire day. If he's indicted, the second we know, we will come up with that and let all of you know. If you haven't yet, subscribe, please. Give us a like on this stream, hit the button. I'm going to tell you, I wasn't joking earlier. It's a cute way to do it. I know it's smarmy, tell YouTube. This is probably, we get struck all the time. We have a difficult relationship with YouTube. They've been leaning towards kids videos, unboxing videos, stuff like that. That's not what we do. I think there's value in what we do. I think that this is a good channel. I hope you feel that way. If you do, like, subscribe, share the content. That helps us out a lot. If you want to become a Patreon, we always appreciate it. Would love to see you on our Discord. This information is going to be on our Discord before we go live with it. And so come in, check us out. But if you like the content, the way the content sticks around is like, subscribe, share. We certainly also appreciate our super chats. So thank you very much, Native Atheist and Sinister Porpoise, for those super chats earlier. And again, we're gonna stay on it. So that's it. For people who say they know that he's going to be arrested Tuesday, no. For people that say that Trump knows he's going to be arrested Tuesday, I don't see a way that that's possible. And his own spokesman has said that he doesn't know that for a fact. The DA might work, well, the DA would work with the Secret Service certainly to arrange it, but the DA doesn't know for certain except under one set of circumstances, and that's that the grand jury has actually already reached a verdict. They notified the judge, say, 4:45 yesterday, we've reached a verdict. The judge then says, oh, we're not reading that right now. We don't have the time or ability. We're not, so we'll do it the next business day. If for some reason the jury wasn't going to meet on Monday, then Tuesday, it's going to happen. That's the closest you can get to knowing. And if that's the circumstances, and I don't know, then that would be the closest one could say, okay, he's going to be indicted, but you still don't know what that verdict is. The judge would know. Probably the judge would know. Actually, they don't normally let the judge know until they reconvene. So it may be that really only the jury knows. So we do know there's a jury. It looks like they're going to indict. It looks like the expectation appears to be on both sides that the indictment is going to come on Tuesday. That's what we know. We are looking for the following. We're looking to see how people react on the Trump side. He appears to be saying a lot of inflammatory things. He could be more inflammatory, so I guess I'm glad he's not doing that. But if he says anything more inflammatory, he's going to get hit with incitement to riot, and I think he knows that. He is, or insurrection, and he is pushing it. And my suspicion is, driving in Luton, is the Supreme Court still right-leaning? No, the Supreme Court is fully on the right. The people on the right are so far on the right and so in lockstep. You can't really call it leaning because they have, even though, they only have one extra vote there, it's sufficient. It's lockstep. It's a far right Supreme Court. So I'll let you know when they turn right leaning. We'll be thrilled. At any rate, we're going to be looking to see how the people react. We're going to be looking to see how Fox News reacts. Fox News now has the opportunity to shape this any way they want. The Speaker of the House has come out and defended Trump sternly. We're going to see where that goes. I don't know. My suspicion is Trump shows some signs of stress and getting a little unglued. He has shown those before and been perfectly fine. So I don't know. That kid's comment, it is kind of typical Trump, but it's a different tone. It's a different way. And the how strong he's coming out saying the January 6th people should all be released from jail. I think at some point, if the stress gets to him, he's going to start to say things that are truly irrefutably a violation even of U.S. Free speech and calls to any number of inappropriate things. So we're going to keep an eye on it. I think this is the beginning of the end. If that indictment comes, which we expect it will, we're gonna expect to see a great many more indictments. People who've been slowing down because they don't want to be the first one are suddenly going to speed up because nobody's going to want to be the last one to indict them. I expect we're going to see the IRS. I expect we're going to see indictments coming down from the DOJ. I think we're going to be seeing a lot in the next 6 to 8 months. So I'm not saying we're not going to see this flurry, but it's going to be. I would not be shocked at an indictment a month if this happens on Tuesday. And again, the confidence is high. So that's the deal, folks. Thank you very much for joining us. That was longer than I had anticipated. But when we're still collating the information, it gets that way because we're processing as we're doing it. I was going to ask Ksandring if he has any final thoughts again, but he's just going to say, "Man, you live in interesting times," and I'm like, "Yeah, thanks." So, you're the only person in my life that throws Chinese curses at my ass.
And you know me too well. That's exactly what I was going to say. Although I was going to caution people.
Yes, please. Oh, you there?
Happens. Yeah. Sorry. I got somebody suddenly called me. How dare they while I'm streaming?
I know.
I was also going to caution people, this is, even though it's a very, very critically important first step, it is just the first step. They've got to actually decide they're going to bring charges. Then we have the trial and whether he's convicted or not. So, it's an important step. It is nowhere near where we should be going, yay. And may you live in interesting times.
Son of a bitch. Yeah. Well, no, that's actually a really good point. Because even if he's indicted, it's nowhere near. But I think the mugshot is going to give people on the left food for months. So there you go. Thank you all for joining us.
Oh yes, it's critically important. I mean, it's critically important. It's a very, very important step because now you've actually gotten the precedent of indicting a former president, current presidential candidate, and like you've said, the dam may well open after you get that first one in. So, I mean, it is a critically important step, but keep things in their place. We still have to get convictions out of this, or it doesn't do a whole lot of good.
Excellent point. I would like to remind people, so this will be the first time on all three. So Trump actually has 3 titles. He is a former president of the United States. That would be the first time one of those has been indicted. He is the head of the Republican Party, which is the de facto until they nominate somebody else. Their previous nominee and or president is their nominee who was president, whatever, is the head of the party. So ostensibly he is the head of the Republican Party. He doesn't have nearly as much influence as he used to, but it would also be the first time the head of a national party was indicted, and obviously he is a credible candidate for that party's nomination, and I don't know if that's ever happened before, but he holds all 3 titles. It's obviously really huge, and we will be keeping an eye on it. Xandring, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you for I was late on this, so it was Xandring passing it off, going, Nick, hello, and I was just like, oh, we need to look into that. And sure enough, so thank you for that. And we'll look forward to, I'm sure we actually have a show. We have the Peter 𝐒𝐤�ehon show planned for Tuesday. So Tuesday, you, myself, Commander McMillan will be discussing Peter 𝐒𝐤�ehon's claim that China will not survive the end of the decade. He explains why economically, politically, and agriculturally, China is over and done for, and there's going to be a massive revolution, complete collapse of them. So he's done a video on it. We are going to do a breakdown of that video for people who want to sort of take a look at it. He's been becoming very popular on YouTube. We already did a video on him. We're going to try to discuss it and put it all in some context. So that'll be on Tuesday. And we may have a lot of other news on Tuesday. Operator Starsky, of course, will be back on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. So that's it. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Xandring. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, I actually get to say something on the outro? You're absolutely welcome. I love being here.
Well, thank you. I was kind of like, too many times, I step over you, and sometimes it's completely deliberate, but I was like, okay, no. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you next time something big comes up, or Tuesday, whatever comes first. Thank you all, and have a good rest of your weekend.